Hello and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week, it chooses the movie, and they discuss it. Today is actually a bonus episode because we are talking to Rob Ciano, the director of Shimmer, which is a horror movie that came out, well, I guess you'd say a horror movie, but a movie that came out last year in 2021, and we have the privilege of being able to talk to him today. So I'm your co-host, Alec.
I'm Justin, and Rob, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited.
How would you classify this movie? Would you call it a horror film?
Yeah, it started out, the original concept was we're going for straight horror. As the script developed, it became a little bit of a mystery, and I think that the final version is kind of like a sci-fi thriller. But there are definitely elements of horror in there. I mean, it birthed from a horror concept, and I think that in the evolution of it, it became sort of a sci-fi horror thriller.
I would say that's a good way to classify it, because there's definitely some thriller aspect and mystery, because you don't really find out, unless I'm mistaken. The movie doesn't directly tell you what this Shimmer being is, right?
Correct. Yeah, our main character, Dr. Thea Kate, is like figuring things out over time, and she kind of like happens upon different clues, but it's really not until the end of the film where you get a true sense of what this thing is.
Yeah, and Alec, I don't know about you, but I spent it's about half the movie trying to figure out like what it could possibly be. And I was like, I didn't know if it was an alien or a demon possibly, or even like a Medusa type monster where maybe you looked at it and then you turned into the Shimmer death that you experienced. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I kept trying to pay attention because I was like, because the old lady touched it. So I was like, okay, maybe it like goes through your skin, but then she didn't get it. And then I noticed a lot of people wearing gloves. So I was like, all right, it can't be the skin. And then she kind of did allude to, well, it's choosing who it wants to go for. So I was like, oh man, this thing is like, it's evil, and it really wants its specific people for specific reasons. So I like that. I definitely started adding more layers and depth to it. It wasn't just like a mindless killer, which I liked.
I wanted there to be a reason why things were happening, even in terms of there was a larger metaphor at work, which sort of like defined why it kind of went toward different people. But I definitely did not want it to be a mindless killer. That's not interesting to me. And that's, there's a scary element to that, but I was interested in something a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rob, did you get any like inspiration from other horror movies or books that helped you create this?
One thing that this isn't exactly horror, but I am definitely inspired by stuff like Doctor Who and kind of sci-fi kind of stuff. I was definitely also inspired by sort of like creature horror and just this idea of like, figuring out what's going on and realizing, oh, this is kind of like a natural occurrence that we weren't aware of previously. So can I point to something specific besides Doctor Who, which is not horror? I'm not totally sure, because I really wanted to do something really different. I kind of just took an amalgamation of these different horror movies I've watched over time and said, okay, well, I like these elements and I'd like to do these other elements differently. And it kind of evolved out of that.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of kind of like, have you ever seen The Blob?
I've seen The Blob.
Yeah, not like actually, not similar.
Not in person.
No, but just like kind of the idea. It's like, where did this thing come from? It's slowly taking people out. Nobody's really taking it seriously until like, right in your face. And I don't know.
Like body snatchers. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that.
Cool.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the casting process, because there was one guy that I loved and I want to see him in everything. It was the Captain Pete Rose, played by Brian Anthony Wilson.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to hear his story because he was the man.
Oh my gosh. Brian, well, first of all, Brian is incredible to work with. He showed up on set. He was extremely professional. He's been in film and television for years. He was on The Wire. He was Detective Holly on The Wire. He's been in films with Bradley Cooper, various people. And actually, I ended up working with a casting director for this film who had, certain connections, and Brian was one of them. And Brian read the script and really enjoyed the character. He thought it was really something different and refreshing, which I was excited to hear when he said that. And I agree. I mean, he was incredible in the role. He brought Captain Rose to life. He came to set with questions. He was asking about why he's visiting. Does he have another reason for visiting Thea? In the third act there, and maybe he's trying to feel her out for different. Like maybe he kind of suspects her, and it's just like he brought stuff in that was, present in the script. But yes, absolutely. Brian, I was very happy to work with Brian and very happy that he seemed invested in the project as well. It was great.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Alec. And Rob, we didn't talk about this prior, so I also wanted to mention Brian.
Did you?
Yeah, because I thought it was funny because he played a very good like captain or like, the highest guy in the agency type role because, those guys, they've been cops for like 25, 30 years. They've seen it all. They're run down. They're kind of, I don't want to say negative, but they're definitely like tired. And he played a very good, like every time someone had bad news, he was like, oh, what are we working with now? And I was like, I believe it. I really believe it that he's stressed by this situation.
Oh, yeah. He has these little facial mannerisms that really like just tell the story. Just there's one or two shots in the film of him that I love the shot because of what he just a little just kind of like there's one where he gives a little smile to Thea as she's leaving the room, kind of just a look of encouragement, but it's so subtle and the editor found it and he captured it and Brian brought it to it was just incredible. Little moments like that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The whole dynamic between Captain Pete Rose, Thea, and Blas. Kurt. Yes. All three of them, just the way they were kind of like playing each other. But like, I don't know. I felt like Thea was just kind of like, I'm just doing my job. Like, why? Like, you're being a real dick here, man.
Yeah.
Well, Blas was kind of like the younger like detective guy, and like I don't know, he definitely didn't take it seriously at first. I did not expect any of the things that happened in the end revolving around Blas and the husband at all. That was like that completely like hit me from the side. Yeah. But I liked Blas at first. I was like, oh, he's just like the cool hip detective guy. Yeah. And then as the movie plays on, I'm like, I don't know about this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He was an interesting character to write. He was an interesting character to direct. Kazi, who played Blas, really brought a lot to the character. And there were some interesting lines that Kazi actually suggested, like, I see what you're trying to do here with Blas, and I see what you're trying to do here. I think this line might work a little better. And I mean, many of those suggestions I took because I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't want to give away too many specifics, but for example, in the scene where Kurt and Thea are in the car and they're having a discussion back and forth, there was a scripted scene there. We pretty much threw it out because Kazi and Nicole, who played Thea, sat down and they were like, we've got some thoughts here. And it was great to work with Kazi. That character was a trip, an absolute trip.
I didn't know the movie kind of was alluding to the fact that maybe it was just professionally that Kazi and Thea knew each other prior, maybe from working with each other. But I thought maybe it was you were going to find out like maybe they dated or they had just been friends for like, 5+ years, an extended period of time. But they definitely were friends or at least comfortable enough to drive in the same car together. And then this whole kind of, as the audience, I'm focusing on what this Shimmer monster is that's killing people. And then also there's this side story of what Kazi's doing when he's not on work. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely cool, and I didn't expect it.
Great. Good.
So Rob, I kind of want to ask you a little bit about like the production process. So it looked like it was filmed, is it Seneca, yes. So Seneca. So it's filmed in Jersey. You're a Jersey director.
Yes.
How did you get like this whole thing started? What kind of like how long did it take? Where did you film? Everything.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I started talking to my co-producer on the project. We had been talking for a few years and trying to figure out like, when and how we could kind of make a film together. And eventually, I introduced this concept of, I had this thought of a movie which challenged the idea of being afraid of the dark. It makes sense why somebody would be afraid of the dark. And I was like, well, I've been really playing with this idea of like, why would somebody be afraid of light? Why would somebody be afraid of the light? What's intimidating about that? And so myself, my co-producer, and we had somebody else on our team as well who ended up editing the film. We all just really did a lot of brainstorming and kind of like came up with a bunch of ideas and metaphors and things about light that are scary and stuff like that. And eventually, like, I took all these pieces and put them together into an outline. And I guess the first draft of the script happened in February of 2019 or so. The first draft was very, very different. Actually, in that first draft of the script, part of the reason that Kurt and Thea have this relationship in the existing film is Kurt was actually part of Thea and Adam's wedding in the first draft of the script. So they were all very close. The idea that I had in my head was that, you know, Thea and Kurt probably started working at the department around the same time a few years ago, and he's a detective, she's in forensics. You know, he wouldn't have started as a detective, but like they probably had spent a lot of time working together over the years, potentially pretty close, and that developed into a friendship, you know, with the husband, and they probably went out for drinks every once in a while and all this kind of stuff. Again, that was in an earlier draft of the script. I showed it to a couple of people, some people that I really trust with screenplays and ideas and good feedback. And I got some good feedback. And so I went in, and I think there were 2 further drafts of the film. And I think that third draft is the one that, you know, that ended up getting the polish and lacquer and getting shot. And that pretty much took the time between February of 2019, and then we ended up shooting in October and November of 2019.
Oh, nice.
Which was great. We shot for about 18 days in New Jersey. We shot mostly in Flemington. The main house was in Flemington, and then we also had scenes that we shot in Ocean Grove. We shot scenes at the farm location that was somewhere else. That may also have been Flemington, but it was fun. I was happy. I was really happy to shoot because I, after college, went out to Los Angeles, and I was there for about a year and a half. You know, I had my degree in filmmaking. What else was I going to do is go to Los Angeles? But I wasn't really able to make movies there. And also, I just like the idea of making movies in a place that doesn't look like California. I feel like so many films, you can look in the background and see a palm tree, even if that film happens to take place in, you know, somewhere that palm trees don't exist.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I was excited to tell a story in the place where I grew up, where I live, you know, with these different elements, and, you know, that kind of spoke to things in my life. But yeah, like I said, we shot in October and November. It was extremely difficult, but it was fun. It was difficult because production is difficult, but It was fun. We had a really great team of people. We had a really dedicated group of people. I think that we had, I feel so fortunate that we had such a good group to work with, because everyone was there and excited and coming up with ideas and being present, and everybody worked really hard. I hope that everyone's excited with the final product, because I certainly am. We lucked out as far as COVID goes. I was able to visit my editor. We had a first cut before COVID really hit. So I actually flew out to Los Angeles in January of 2020.
Wow, you guys had a first cut that quickly?
Yeah, we
Wow.
moved fast.
That's amazing.
So I'm not exactly sure how we moved that fast, but our editor, Mike Mayer, I mean, he really killed it. I mean, he did a good job on the edit. And luckily we were able to do some kind of like in-person refinements before all of COVID happened.
Right.
That was really when it got a little more difficult to get those refinements in, just because everything slowed down at that time. And also I was trying to work with visual effects, which was made, I think, a little more difficult because, you know, mid 2020, I wasn't about to fly out to Los Angeles to sit with my visual effects person, and even that process is difficult to do over somebody's shoulder because visual effects is pretty involved. But I mean, I guess it's definitely very fortunate that we got everything in the can and we didn't need to, you know, capture any additional footage during the pandemic, and we were able to get all that done. You know, finally I think that we had our final cut sometime around maybe July of 2020, and that's when we started shopping it around. Yeah.
Wow. That's really awesome.
Do you currently have something else in the works, or are you allowed to discuss that?
I do, and I am. I'm actually just finishing up production, or post-production, I should say, on my second feature film. It's a sort of a rom-com. It's a very different genre. It's wildly different, called 29. And that is about 2 kind of naive 29-year-olds. They've been skating their way through life, never really had to make any major decisions. And they meet and start to fall in love just in time for life to threaten to take them in separate directions. So they need to take the reins of their lives for the first time.
Okay.
I'm really excited about that film for a few reasons. One is because where Shimmer was shot in New Jersey, this film takes place specifically in Asbury Park, New Jersey, using all local Asbury Park music, Asbury Park locations. The whole film is very, you know, like we reference Asbury Park beer, like it's a whole thing. So like part of what I want to do as a filmmaker is represent like my experiences and really setting stories in places that I lived and you know, am from. So that was another thing. That's a reason that I'm really excited about this upcoming film too.
Yeah, you must
Okay.
have been so proud when you had that like Made in New Jersey logo at the end of the credits. Like that must
Oh
have
yeah.
been.
Oh yeah, and we're actually premiering this film. As you know, as far as things that are appropriate, this film is going to premiere at the Garden State Film Festival in March, which is hosted in Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Hey.
So it's a whole thing of synchronicity. It's great.
Okay. Yeah, I see Brian is also in this, so that's pretty cool
He
that you're
is.
working with, some of the same actors.
Ah.
Yes.
So, not to jump to the end of Shimmer, do you have
Mhm.
any thoughts for, because I noticed you kind of finished it with there could be another one.
Mm-hmm.
I like how you ended it kind of in the aspect where, it's buried underground. They think it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I would have like thrown it in the middle of the ocean, like way deep down. But
Right.
it kind of ended with the tractor going over it, like maybe someone will find it in the future.
If I want to continue the story, I'd want to have a real good reason to continue the story. But I put a little hint in the script, mostly for myself, because I knew that I liked the concept and I might want to continue it afterward. As the forensic scientists in the film are kind of, you see these little motes of light floating around in different places in the film. And in the script, I note that if any one of those individual motes of light happens to get enough food, it could itself turn into another creature.
Ah.
So I am thinking maybe that thing underground doesn't survive, but maybe there's a moat somewhere, or part of the idea is one of the things that I was working with is that this creature is a natural occurring thing in the world that we just really didn't know about beforehand. So maybe there's another one out there already. Maybe there's a few. Maybe they can multiply. Maybe this is a brand new creature that's suddenly evolved on this planet that now is going to become a major threat. So there's a lot of places to take it. And I want to make sure that if I take it in any one of those places, it's worth going there.
Yeah.
That's responsible. Yeah. That's responsible.
Thank you. Thanks.
I noticed when the kid was playing with the kaleidoscope and he was looking it in, it was kind of like showing light reflecting off of each other. I was sitting on the couch and I was like, that would be a good way to kind of trap something if you had kind of like a, I guess, like House of Mirrors type thing. And then when she created a kaleidoscope to trap the monster, I was like, that's perfect. So it could theoretically survive underground, like looking at itself.
It definitely could. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, like you have that tractor coming across, the title before you see the tractor says 3 years later. It literally could be that's the thing that unearths it and lets it back out. I had a thought maybe there's a fake out at the beginning of the sequel where, the farmer here sees this thing in the field and goes over and it's empty. We, the audience, know what we think is in there, and oh no, there's nothing in there, but it turns out it's already gotten out because it's already been unearthed, or who knows, there's so many things that can happen.
We never really see how it got to Earth or how it manifests. We just see the deer. So it's like there's a whole prequel series of how it got here. So who knows?
It could be. Yeah, it could be. Absolutely.
Rob, I also just want to say awesome that you like wrote, directed, produced, did all of this. Your second film, are you also writing that one?
Yep, I'm the writer, director, producer of that one, and also I'm also the editor of this one too.
Wow.
Which is not exactly the role that I wanted to do, but I am actually glad that I went ahead and edited it because I that's my practice, I guess.
Yeah, you'll learn more. No, that's so cool because I wanted to see if there was going to be a difference between, the writing and directing aspect and then directing someone else's work. So I just was curious about that. But hey, you're becoming more of a jack of all trades now with the editing on this one.
Trying to, yeah.
Cool.
I don't know about you, Alec, but one of the most gruesome kills that I thought in this movie was when I don't know if they were considered morticians, but the guys that were looking at the dead body, the shimmer, like it went through his skull and was like sticking out of his forehead. And I was like, ooh, that's rough.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also one of the cool things is two concepts that I like about what you did here, Rob, is one, you very slowly introduced what this could be. And we still never really know what it is. And then the second thing is that we don't even necessarily know if this shimmer entity is necessarily bad. Like, we don't know if it's malicious. It could just be like a foreign species that ended up here and it's scared and think that the humans are attacking it and it's just defending itself.
I'm excited you said that. One of the metaphors that I was working with, and this is not a one-to-one metaphor, but one of the metaphors that I was working with was the idea of the light of truth. Because people hide from truth. People don't want the truth to come out. And exactly like what you just said, like if you look at the shimmer as truth, the truth is just what it is. It's not good or bad. It's just what it is. And so it's how you deal with the truth that dictates how you feel about it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or how the truth deals with you in terms of this film, you know?
Yeah, like the only times that it really attacked is when someone was like in a threatening distance to it, like when the doctor, when the scientists were kind of like poking at the guy with his hands in the thing, and when she was like, "You gotta take your hands out," I was like, "Dude, you gotta get out of there!
Oh
like,
yeah,
stop touching it!"
Oh yeah,
that was a good fake
yeah.
out. I was definitely expecting a hand to get blown up, and I was like, okay, like the tension and him pulling it out. I was like, is it gonna happen? Oh god.
Yep, good.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the thing. A lot of modern films will be like, okay, so why is there a light monster? Okay, is it like global warming? Is it like nuclear radiation? Like, we need all these explanations. But I like older movies for that reason specifically. It's like, listen, there's just a fucking monster, man, and it's just killing people. And it's really that simple. But like, you get more invested in the characters and what's going on with them, and you did a really good job of making you care about these characters, even the bad ones. You're just like, what the hell is this guy's deal? Like, you know, they weren't just like one-dimensional, come in, get killed people. So I can't believe this is your first movie.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's the first feature.
Yeah, and Alec, I don't know if you noticed, but Rob, on our last few episodes, we just so happened to hit movies that kind of, like, for example, we did Pig, and then we did, I'm not going to remember it. Alec, you'll probably remember it. Where
Unforgivable?
The Unforgivable, yes. The Unforgivable and Pig, where I spent the majority of the movie feeling a certain way about a character because I didn't like them, because the movie kind of made it seem like they were bad guys. And then you find out in the end, it's not what it seems. And in this movie, I spent the majority of the movie not liking the husband because, you know, you kind of, I think it mentions like he cheated at the bar. And then you find out in the end, like, that's not what happened. And I sat there at the end and I was like, like, maybe I shouldn't just openly believe what someone says so early on.
Justin, you're learning like about life, man.
Wow.
You know, I'm developing as a movie critic as the movie itself unfolds.
That is growth.
Look
at that. You know what they call that in movies? Character development.
There you go. Did you notice that, Alec? That wasn't just me, right?
Which part specifically?
Well, like the same concept. Like, I haven't noticed it in films before, but like in Pig, Unforgivable, and even this, like they weren't bad people.
No, I mean, it's mostly just like the situation they're put in and like how they're dealing with it. I mean, obviously, I think like, you know, roofing somebody at a bar and, you know, keeping them up. You know, there's some things that I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, for the most part, it's just like the situation they're in and they're reacting, you know. But I don't know, Justin. I've seen you grow during this podcast. You know, you've even come around to the Star Wars sequels a little bit. You know, you really. Well,
are you talking about the? No.
Okay, all right. Anyways, speaking of Star Wars and special effects, blah blah blah. My brain is crazy, but the special effects in this movie, man, very impressive. And maybe I'm crazy, but didn't I see your name as the guy that did the effects in the credits?
I did a few effects. There's a few effects in the credits in the film that I personally did. I have a background in doing a lot of visual effects stuff. You just mentioned Star Wars a second ago. Growing up, I made a lot of lightsaber videos with my friends. And so I started putting those videos on the computer and putting special effects into them. And so I did a few shots in the film. Most of the effects were done by Brian DeMetz, who was our Final Light visual effects artist, who did an incredible job. All the shots of the creature itself that you see, and most of the like creature-y stuff he did. But yes, they look really good. I'm really pleased with how they came out.
Yeah, and that must be helpful. I mean, you're learning to edit now, but just like knowing a little bit about the special effect, even if you're not doing them 100%, still knowing what you're talking about when you're articulating that must be so useful tool as a director.
I think especially on independent film, which this was an independent film, we have no support from a larger production, company. This was just us with private funding. So I really had to bring all of the knowledge that I had gained, doing lightsaber videos when I was little and researching how to incorporate practical and digital visual effects and have that look seamless. We didn't have a visual effects supervisor on set. It was just me saying, I know how we're going to put this shot together, so you guys have to trust me. Like, shine this bounce board that way because I'm going to put a visual effect in front of this thing. Right. And everyone's just saying like, okay, Rob, like, I'll believe you when I see it, but we'll do it. And that's what I was talking about, that trust before. It was like this whole crew of people was like, okay, like we we hear you. It seems like you know what you're talking about. We can't exactly see it, but we know what you're talking about, you know, or we see that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So Rob, I like how you mentioned, you know, you having to do this yourself. And excuse my ignorance here, but I am curious, how does one, say I wanted to hypothetically create a film one day, how do you acquire the budget to pay for this? Like, what do you do?
There's a lot of different avenues that you can go. So a lot of people are familiar with crowdfunding sources. So those exist. Those are really good if you happen to know a lot of people who would be willing to give you money. But you can do, you know, so like if you wanted to do that, you can make a nice trailer and put together a cool treatment. But then there's also other avenues. For example, like if you go to some private wealth managers and you put together a really good portfolio and a treatment and say, hey, here's the projects that I've worked on previously. Here's, you know, the revenue that they've brought in, you know, or even if you haven't worked on projects previously, come in there with a good pitch deck and you say, here's the film that I want to make. Here is the storyline. Here is the cast that I would want to have in it, or things that I think would look really good in there. Here are some really cool elements. Here is what I think this movie could make financially. And, you know, if you put together a really good presentation, maybe make a little sizzle reel or something, but you can go to a private wealth manager. I mean, the advice that I've read in many books on producing and raising funds for films is basically go to the person you would ask for money and figure out who they would ask for money. Now, in terms of this film, we got funding through private sources. We, you know, approached individual people and basically sold the vision to these people and, you know, got pieces of budget, you know, here and there in different places, which is another way to do it. You know, you can just kind of say, hey, you know, I have this vision, take a look at this pitch deck. This pitch deck describes this vision as best as I can without actually shooting the movie. You know, as far as approaching somebody to get funding and an investment, my feeling is you want to give them what the whole movie looks like as much as you can without having shot the movie, and say, if we shoot the movie, we can do this for you. And also, if you think about the kind of film that you're going to make, for example, one of the projects that I have sort of in development right now, early development, I'm working on something with my wife about Italian America, about just that Italian American experience. So, you know, one thing that we were thinking of is like we could potentially, when we have a good storyline and a good pitch deck, we can approach different Italian American communities and say, hey, listen, like we have a story that is part of our heritage, and this is a part of your heritage, and this is something that, you know, we think you might be interested in telling this part of the story. That's just an idea, you know, something maybe for the future. So, you know, if your movie is about a bunch of artists, you can go to an artist and say, hey, I've got a movie about an artist. Does this reflect your life in any way? Do you like that? Do you want to contribute to it? I mean, I've only ever operated outside of the studio system, so my experience in fundraising has been a little sporadic sometimes. I think that's how it tends to happen in independent film, because sometimes it might take, you know, 5, 10, you know, Eraserhead. There was how many years between opening the door and walking in the door in making that film. It was something like 7 years, between those two shots, you know, so sometimes that happens in independent film. But I think a good idea, if you are going to make your own film, think about what you already have as a resource. A really good book to describe that is Rebel Without a Crew by Robert Rodriguez. And he's talking about making the film El Mariachi and how they had a very small amount of money, but they had all these resources. So they literally wrote the film around the resources that they already had and didn't have to pay for. And I think that that's a good approach, especially if it's like a first film and you're not totally sure how you're going to get funding for it. Mm-hmm. Write a movie that you know that you can shoot even if you got nothing for it, because you have everything you need already except for maybe actors. Mm-hmm. You know, think about a movie that takes place on your street, or a movie that takes place, you know, or like we did with the film 29, which takes place in Asbury Park. That's a low budget film. But what we did was I wrote scenes that take place in front of famous landmarks like the Paramount Theater, like the casino, like the carousel. And so I shot scenes in front of these locations, which immediately gives the film production value and makes it look like it cost more to make than it actually did. So I think to answer your question, yeah, I mean, write your script to shoot as simply as possible and leave room to expand if you get more resources. but go to people that you know who you think would connect to your story and say, I have a story I think you'd connect to. And, if you have the ability and make a presentation and a pitch deck and go to a private wealth manager or go to somebody who, makes investments, or even ask around, just literally ask around, call a film school, call up a film school and say, I'm a filmmaker. I want to make a movie. I'm not totally sure where to start. And they can give you some resources. Call up a TV station and say, I want to make a short. Because the worst thing that can happen is that they say no, and then you call somebody else. Or you pick up your own phone. Many people have a phone that has a camera that can take video on it. So make a short film, put some cool color correction on it, put it online, and then show that to somebody and say, I made this thing for nothing on my phone. I bet you I can make something better with this script that I have with your help.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to unpack there, but
that's a lot. Yeah, that was a
lot. No. That's what we want here. There is one question I've wanted to ask, you as a director specifically, because I have heard some other directors say like, oh my God, post-production is my favorite, or other people that are like, being on set is what it's all about. Between pre, post, and actual production, is there one that's your favorite? Is there one that you despise? I mean, what's your experience with those?
I can probably pick things that I like and don't like about all three production stages, but I think that pre-production can be a little lonely because it's a lot of writing, and it can also be very tedious because when you actually start setting the film up, it's a lot of planning and research and phone calls and annoying people and stuff like that. So I think I would cross pre-production off, although I do enjoy writing. Production is just a blast to me. I mean, it's tiring, it's exhausting. You're going to come home every single day and just fall asleep and do nothing else. I mean, that's just what production is. But also it's energizing and thrilling, and you get to work on puzzles all day. That might be my favorite part, just because on set, as a director, your job is to figure out puzzles. You need to figure out how to take the words on the page and put them in front of people and have them make sense in physical space, which is cool. And then problems happen and you have to figure them out on the fly. But I might have to say post. I'm not a humongous fan of editing, but that's an even bigger puzzle. And things that you wouldn't expect to connect end up connecting, and you get to see all of the film come together. You get to see it happen, especially, if I'm the editor myself, I'm bringing it together, and there's a kind of a creative, the film, I guess, is conceived in the scripting phase, but it's born in the editing. And to be a part of that and to be actively doing that is really special. So maybe that is my answer.
No, I do hear that a lot. The post is definitely exactly what you're saying. You're like, all of this hard work, all of it, I finally get to see. So it's
yeah.
Justin, do you have any thoughts for Rob or questions?
No, it's a great experience. Thank you for coming on here, and I hope somewhere down the line we get to see more of the Shimmer monster.
Yes, we'll see. It hides in the light.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you so much. It's always great to have filmmakers come on here, talk about the experience. If people want to check out Shimmer, where can they find it now?
Yes, you can go to shimmerthemovie.com. The film is available on Amazon Prime. It's on Vudu, Dish, In Demand, and it's also available in Walmart stores, where it's supposed to be.
Ooh, nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, it's on physical DVD and Blu-ray?
You better believe it.
Wow. Awesome. See, I'm a physical guy, so that's great.
That's good. That's good. You might have to do some tracking it down. I think that they cycle the movies every once in a while, so
Sure.
I'm not sure. So some people have said they've had some difficulty finding it. I found it in mine, but then I went back and then it was gone. So I don't know. Maybe everybody bought it.
Hey,
nice.
There you go. All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much. And we will. This is going to be a bonus episode, so I guess I don't really know when it'll come out. But yeah, thank you so much, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. Appreciate it.
Take care.